I am sick of having this conversation. One guy is the post that's holding up this tent, Mars. One.
Speaking of one guy, did you hear the things he's been saying recently?
First and foremost, the French are asking him to hand over his passport. That's what they're asking him to do. Let's we can start and stop the conversation with that.
Well, his check engine light is on right now, and he's still driving. Like your check engine light is on right now.
We love the game. We not respecting someone for loving the game.
You know how I feel about it. I'm with the sit it down. I'm with the sit it down.
Oh yeah, me too. If I'm Embiid, I'm not.
But no, I haven't heard what you. I hadn't heard what he said, Mars. What did he?
Oh, he said a couple things that doing the rounds on Twitter. One is he thinks he could be in the GOAT conversation if he didn't have injury problems.
Wait.
Oh.
Let's stay right here. Hey, let's put it in park. Or let's put our foot on the brake. How do we feel about this? No injuries. But can we also talk about what that looks like, though?
I don't hate it.
He's a multiple-time MVP for stars.
That's number one, Mars. We'll start there.
Starting with he's a multiple-time MVP.
So if he doesn't get hurt, he showed up in 20. What I think it was 14.
He got drafted in 14, played his first year in 16, 17.
So what years do you think he wins league MVP? Because you already got James Harden, 17, 18, 19. Does he beat him out any of those years?
No.
How about in 20?
No.
21. Uh-oh, now it's getting tricky. It gets a little bit tricky in 21.
He was going to win it till he got hurt. He played like 50 games that year of the 72, and he got hurt and the T wrote everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so no injuries, 21.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't win it, it's very close. But for the sake of this,
they were the first seed that year. They were the first seed.
Yeah. So 21. I think Embiid gets it if there's no injuries.
Right.
Yeah.
22.
No.
No,
not that year.
That's Jokic or Giannis.
Because he basically had a Jabbar year that year.
No, he finished. He finished two. He finished 2 that year, but the issue was, remember, they finished at the 4th seed that year.
He should have came. Giannis was being snubbed that year. I don't know what was going on.
22?
Giannis had vote fatigue. It's cool.
In 22, that was the year. Those 2 years after his first one.
Yeah.
You think he should have finished 2 over Embiid that year?
Yes.
In 22.
I remember what I was saying about Giannis that year. Yeah, I remember what I was saying about Giannis that year. Yeah. I had Giannis for sure.
Remember too, Swiper, that was the year after they won the NBA championship. So him coming into after what he had done in the finals in 21. So in 22, that was the year after Milwaukee.
No, but didn't he have one of his least efficient years that year? I honestly,
that was the year he was finally making jumpers. Nah, that was not
41% for mid-range year.
Yeah, that was the year he was finally making. That was the year he was finally making jumpers. The playmaking was there. It was still he was shooting free throws at like above 70%. Like he was, Giannis was in my top 2 that year. If I remember correctly, I think I had Giannis as my MVP because the 6th thing. But I've changed my mind on that in recent times. But yeah, Giannis would be top. So Embiid wouldn't win 22 for me.
So he won in 23. And can we dead the logic? Was 23 a pity year?
I wouldn't say a pity year, but
because that's what I gotta hear.
I do find it funny that undoubtedly Jokic's best season is the one he didn't win MVP. But I don't think it's a pity award. I think
he literally went. Remember, he wrote that Shams article came out. He said that why is there pressure on me? I'm not a 2-time MVP. The media doesn't like me. Analytics make some players look better than what they actually are, and all that other stuff. And then what happened was that 52-point game he had versus the Celtics when the Celtics did not play Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams in April, and then that put him over the top. But then remember, that was also the white boy MVP year. In about a month.
That's what really did a lot.
Yeah. In a month, there was the white boy MVP argument. The Nuggets got 7 games above the white boy MVP argument, and then next thing you know, Embiid started going on that tear. The Nuggets started losing.
Yeah, and Jokic also had his worst stretch of the season to close.
No. Just to correct that, he didn't. He averaged 26, 13, and 9.
I remember those 4 games, man. I remember.
No. I'm saying over the month of March, though, it was a 13-game sample size. They lost 4 straight
games. Those 4 games would be the difference, Mars. Yes. I told you this already, Mars.
No, but in terms of the voting, that's what the difference was. Yeah.
The reason why he didn't win the league MVP is because they weren't ready to have that conversation. That's why he didn't win it. They were not prepared to take it there. Because he wins the league MVP for the 3rd straight year. They win the NBA championship. He wins the finals MVP. Now we got to start having a different conversation about Joker. And they weren't prepared to have that conversation. They weren't.
I mean, I remember that whole year. You guys heard what I was saying about Jokic that year. I mean, there's no. So I was saying everything you could possibly say. But I vividly remember Kendrick Perkins because a lot of it was intertwined. Kendrick Perkins comes out and starts talking about basically without saying it as clear as day.
Right.
If you think Jokic is the MVP, you're racist. That's basically what he was saying. And then Jokic has that stretch where, because Houston was in that stretch, and then we spoke about it on the panel where Jokic, his defense was egregious for about 4 or 5 games. Fluent was like, I paid attention to Jokic's defense recently, and it's been terrible. And then I was like, it's unfortunate that you started paying attention to his defense when he starts playing the worst defense of the year. So like that, all of that intertwined ended up giving Embiid the edge because Embiid was going on a tear to close the year, and then Jokic picked it back up. But once Embiid had the narrative in his favor and Jokic had that stretch of bad games, and once everything starts circulating on the timeline of Jokic not playing defense, Jokic wasn't getting
them videos coming out. Yeah. And there was a lot of Bucks fans because they didn't want him to get more than Giannis.
Yeah, so Jokic just wasn't getting it back. That's what the MVP is all about, narratives. Jokic lost the narrative late February, early March. Embiid was going on the tear. He was putting up 40. It was like, and then like to close the year, like Swiper said, he had that 50 points against Boston, like one of the last games of the year. Embiid just closed the season better with the narrative on his side. He won it. I'm not mad that he won it. I think Jokic was clearly the best player in the regular season that year, clearly. But I'm not mad that Embiid won it. I understand why he won it. And with no injuries, I still think he would win it again because I think the narrative will go in his favor again. So, and this year, I think he would have won it running away.
He might have been. I
don't know if he would have held that pace down though. That was insane what he was doing. I don't see
why not. Which I gotta pose the question to both you and Mars, because now he's not injured. So now with him being injured, that affects the way he plays. He doesn't play on the block as much. He doesn't play as rough as he normally would because he's afraid of getting injured. What does that do for his game? Does he play more on the box? Does he play closer to the basket? Does he not handle? Does he not do the let me show you? Look at me. I'm on the 3-point line. Look at me. I can throw the ball between my legs. Is that not as much as opposed to now because I'm not injured and I don't have to worry about that as much? I can play more. The size that I am, I can play more around the basket. I can play more in the mid post. And does that enhance his game or does that take away from his game?
Chill. And even on top of that, it's not even just the mental part. I just feel better. I'm not 60%. I'm not 70%. I don't.
Well, that would be the mental game. Yes.
Well, no, it's mental, but physically too. I can literally do more. Like I'm not wearing this big ass brace. I can run a little faster. I'm a little quicker. I can get off the ground more.
Right. I think he's a better.
If he looks slower. Does he look less fluid and slower? Like notice, like how much more noticeably slower does he look than Anthony Davis?
Swiper, I'm going to be honest with you. He runs like he got a piano on his back. That's what he looked like. He looks like he's laboring.
Dude look like he's running with a toddler on his leg. Like you know, like when you come home, when you come home, your toddler jump on your leg, like that's what it looks like. Looks like he just got home from work and his little baby is not letting go of his legs because he just miss her dad so much. I can't. What are we talking about, y'all? We damn these MVPs y'all talking about. The GOAT conversation.
I mean, it's all gonna come down to the playoffs. Like we can 3 MVPs, but it's all gonna come down to the playoffs. It's gonna be will he perform in the postseason if he's 100% healthy? I understand Embiid feeling that way. I think early on in his career, a lot of his playoff mishaps are more than just him being hurt. I do think it plays a part in it, but I do think it's more than just him being hurt. But I also think a big part of Embiid's playoff legacy is he hasn't got to the conference finals. But then I look at it and I'm like, they win while he's out there. Like I can't be like, well, Embiid's not that guy because they're losing in the times he's off the court. Not in terms of games he's not playing, in terms of he goes to the bench and they get smoked. Like, am I meant to blame Embiid for that? So like, I'm less on he has to win, but in terms of his offensive game falling off, I do think in recent years, like 22, 23, 24, I do think he'd play better in the playoffs if he was 100% healthy. And I do think that would help him a lot. But I think they still should have beat the Hawks even if Embiid was healthy.
And
I saw shout out B More. He posted not B More. Somebody posted the West from 6 Man from YouTube when B got ripped by Danilo Gallinari at the end of the game 7. I completely forgot about that. I mean, it's just it was a collapse, and it wasn't Ben Simmons. It wasn't just Ben Simmons. So
I thought he did a great job defensively on Trae Young, to be honest with you, throughout that entire series. Sure, you can become a bit of a liability when you don't look at the basket, but he did get downhill from time to time. But defensively, I thought he did a great job. Joel Embiid, the way he played, not just in that game 7, even though he was hobbled, they were good enough that they should have beat Atlanta. There was no reason that they should have lost to Atlanta, none whatsoever. Him playing more on the block, but that goes back to Ron, what I talked about with the mental aspect of his game. If I'm hurting, I don't really feel livelier. I don't feel bouncy. I don't really feel as aggressive because I'm hurting. I don't really feel like I can do all the things that I'm able to do. So if he's not like that, then he is a bit more aggressive. And I think Doc Rivers not necessarily uses him different. I think he implements himself more. But the fact that they lost to Atlanta, that's inexcusable. They shouldn't have lost to them. No.
I think Embiid just has clear flaws, and they're getting better in terms of mapping the floor and processing. But in 21, you could see he just had clear flaws in terms of being able to read defenses. And that's why Atlanta played. Like, I still think Embiid overall played well. I do think the torn meniscus affected him. But he still, like, in terms of once Atlanta stopped just sending doubles from one pass away, he struggled. Like, that's why his turnovers go up in the playoffs. Not because just he's injured, it's because defenses become more complex and he struggles to read defenses. Like, he's not a perfect player, but I do think the GOAT is a stretch. I mean, we know who we're talking about when we say the GOAT. Like, whether or not you think it's LeBron or Jordan or Kareem or Kobe or Bill Russell, whoever, we know like the group of players that you're talking about. Do I think Embiid is of that level? No. But do I think Embiid has a right to feel that way? Yes. I think any player of Embiid's stature saying, I think I'm just as good as these guys, I don't think it's crazy for him to say that, for him to believe that.
Now, Mars, you're saying that he's not of that level. Is it because of the injuries that we've seen? Because, again, we're talking about a guy who he's not injured. The idea of him struggling with the double team when it comes from the weak side of the floor as opposed to one pass, even though there's a bunch of different spots on the floor where it's one pass away. But I could say the same thing about Olajuwon. You know, Olajuwon had a difficult time passing out of the double team. Moses Malone was a black hole. Sure, none of these guys are considered.
He ain't in the GOAT conversation.
Right, none of these guys are in the GOAT conversation. But I bring that up to say that Joel Embiid, as time went on, he did improve. And him being bigger, without the injuries, does he perform better? Is he more aggressive? And does that enhance him being a big man? I can't say with 100% certainty that it doesn't.
He performs better. I just don't know how much of higher regard it puts him in. I think the difference between him and Hakeem is, even though Hakeem did have similar flaws, and Hakeem, by his own admission, has said he didn't trust his teammates for a long time. So
he did.
But it's about, then it comes down to the difference in era. Hakeem's era, his ability to play make out of doubles wasn't as necessary as it is for Joel Embiid. And that's not me dismissing the 90s. I'm just talking about when you look at the way the defenses were playing, Hakeem is playing against versus Joel Embiid. Yes, Hakeem was going up against better post defenders and stuff. But in terms of the complexity and where they're sending doubles from, and just in terms of the defensive rules and structure, Hakeem wasn't as detrimental that he didn't see the floor as well as Joel. Also, Hakeem's probably a better tough shot maker than Joel too. Yes, so he could get away with it more. And the defensive side of the ball. Because of the rules and what Hakeem was able to do in terms of camping in the lane and his mobility on defense, which was much better than Joel, even when Joel was healthy. He made more of a defensive impact too. So just the era differences, then the mobility that Hakeem has an advantage of, and then just top of this added to the skill set. I just don't think Joel is better than Hakeem. And I don't think even if Joel's been healthy his whole career, he would be better than Hakeem. But I think he'd be better than he is, and he'd be held in higher regards. I think Joel Embiid is critically underrated, but I don't think that means he'd be in the GOAT conversation. But I do think I should be able to say Joel Embiid versus David Robinson and not be looked at crazy.
Right.
But he's been hurt, so I can understand why who's better. But for me, I think that's the level of player Joel's in.
People's biggest pushback would just be the playoffs, though, with David Robinson.
Yeah, but Joel has even more questions for most people. So that's why that's what I'm saying. I think that's the tier of big he's in my opinion. You got Hakeem, Shaq, Kareem, Bill Russell.
Right.
Jokic is entering that group too. Those guys, I don't think Joel's them. But David Robinson, Embiid, if you want to throw in like the couple years of Bill Walton, you want to maybe you view Ewing in extremely high regard.
Sure.
That group of bigs, that's where I think Joel should be. but you talk to people and they don't think Joel's better than Dwight Howard, and that's like, but he is.
Do you think they're ranked the same in all-time discussions?
That's where it gets tricky.
Similar?
I'll keep going. I'm sorry.
Do I think who gets ranked the same in all-time discussions?
Do you think they're ranked similarly in all-time discussions? Because I think Embiid's only mishap is the it's just going to be the playoff stuff. But to me, the injuries don't make as much of a difference as he still is an MVP player for 4 years. For these last 4 years, he's been an MVP player. It's him.
But see, that's the thing, though, Swiper. What you just brought up.
He was an MVP player in 2019.
With the injuries, he's an MVP player. And on top of that, we're talking about a guy when he first showed up, the big man era was basically lagging. It was weak. So if he's not injured and he comes in and dominates like that, we already know that this is a copycat league. So if he comes in and dominates the way I think he could, because I actually thought that he could be Olajuwon. I thought he could be that good or even better. So if he's coming in and dominating like that and winning, this is a copycat league, which means the big man like that comes back because they have to predicate what they're doing based on what Joel Embiid is doing. So if we're playing against a weak big man era and he's dominating that era and he's winning, we have to start talking about him in a completely different regard, especially if he's winning at a high rate. It's the player choice way. Them boys don't get it started. The player choice way.